Hi, I'm Katie Stevenson, founder of SYLLABEE. Welcome to my free mini course meant to equip and empower parents to support their children with dyslexia or trouble reading. Today we're going to be talking about constructive feedback and partial credit. In today's email I asked you a question. How are we supposed to improve if we can't repeat what we did right? This is a mirror of a more common question. How are we supposed to improve if we can't fix what we did wrong? Together, these concepts form the core of constructive feedback. I'm going to argue that both of these questions are equally important, but that the positive side of constructive feedback is often underemphasized. See, there are two types of constructive feedback: positive feedback, what you did right, and negative feedback, what you did wrong. When giving constructive feedback, it's important to give both. The positive feedback you give is at least as important as the negative. As my mother, who's a math tutor, once told me, they say you should always give credit where credit is due. Well, when you're tutoring, there's two more related principles to keep in mind. That you should always give partial credit where partial credit is due, and that partial credit is always due. Again, partial credit is always due. I cannot emphasize this enough. In order to correct yourself, you need to be able to compare your answer to the correct answer so that you can recognize what aspects of your answer match and what aspects do not. Only then can you keep what is good and change what is not. When you give constructive feedback, both positive and negative, you facilitate the process of comparison for your child, teaching them to self-correct. Obviously, positive feedback also helps with morale, but don't be fooled. It's not just nice. It's vitally important for learning itself. Let's get into an example. Your child is working with a word like spin, and they misread it as span. Common practice would be to mark the whole thing as wrong. But what happens with the child is that they start over from ground zero. They see their answer is 100% wrong. They go back to the original and start from scratch instead of modifying their answer so it's closer to being correct. It's common for them to rapid fire guess a bunch of related words, often starting with just the same level of understanding or the same first letter. Sink, spam, spit. None of these are any closer than the original effort was. You want to avoid your child going back to the drawing board or having an arbitrary approach when they're already partway to the right answer. Instead of marking their answer as wrong, you can say, all right, a lot of this is good. Let's look here. They have an S, you have an S. They have a P, you have a P. They have an N, you have an N. What's different? And that's when they're able to realize, oh, I just have to change one letter. This localizes and makes their effort visible. Instead of going back and reinventing the wheel 5 times, they get to think about the one part they really do need to correct. Meanwhile, the things they're doing correctly get reinforced. With this method, you get a lot more efficient learning for your time, and your child feels more validated and recognized for the work that they've been putting out. In your next study session with your child, remember, positive feedback is just as important as negative feedback, and partial credit is always due. Thanks! This has been SYLLABEE's mini lesson on constructive feedback and partial credit. Check out our site down in the description if you want to see more of our content.